1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
27 Russian soldiers were taken prisoner by members of the Russian Volunteer Corps, the Freedom of Russia Legion and the Siberian Battalion during a raid into Belgrade and Kursk regions of Russia. In the village of Spodaryushino, Russian servicemen raised a white flag and surrounded to the volunteers on their own. Video confirmation was published by the OSINT analysts. During 6 days of operation in Kursk and Belgrade regions, the Russian army lost 613 people killed and 829 wounded. The army of the aggressor country also lost 7 tanks, 20 infantry fighting vehicles, 4 armored personnel carriers and 57 military vehicles. Some of the equipment has been put out of action. The Russian military is trying to dislodge the volunteers, meanwhile destroying homes of Russian citizens.
The Russian army is hitting its own territory very hard. Kozinka is actually wiped out by Russian bombing. The Russian army has absolutely no regard for civilian casualties. Just as they destroyed residential areas in Ukraine, they are now behaving the same way on the territory controlled, at least formally, by Vladimir Putin.
Volunteers are moving forward. On March 17th, they took control of 2 settlements in the Belgrade region, the village of Gorkovsky and the village of Kozinka. Meanwhile, Kremlin propagandists have already reported several times on the destruction of the Russian Volunteer Corps, the Freedom of Russia Legion and the Siberian Battalion. The volunteer raids are extremely painful for the Kremlin, analysts say, especially during pseudo-elections. After all, they demonstrate the Russian authorities' inability to protect their own people.
It would seem that after 2023, when the first such approaches were made, a lot of things were announced, saying that we would take measures, that we would mine here, that we would put equipment there. Kadyrov's troops said that they would also stand there, but as it turned out, they did not. So they found weaknesses and were able to get in. The fighting is still going on, the situation has not been localized.
A raid by Russian volunteers proves that armed resistance to Moscow regime is possible, and it is the only potentially effective option for Russians, according to members of Russian Volunteer Corps, the Freedom of Russia Legion and the Siberian Battalion.
We have thousands of applications. Each of our successful operations receives wide coverage in the Ukrainian, Russian opposition and Western media. And naturally, every such event causes a new surge of people wanting to join us, because people see the real results of the struggle, not useless actions that lead to nothing.
The operation of volunteers hits the regime's image. After all, the Federal Security Service, National Guard of Russia units and private paramilitary companies specially formed to defend the Russian border regions have proven ineffective. Reported by Anastasia Tarnavska, Valeria Nekopelova, UATV News.